and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBOM is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBOM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mastering the Business of Yoga. I am, as always, super excited that you're here with me today, and I'm really excited about the guest that is joining us here today. Today on the podcast, I am joined by Laura Munkholm. She's the president and co-founder of Walla Software, an all-in-one business management platform for boutique fitness studios. As one of only 2 female executive leaders in FitTech, Laura is highly unique in that she deeply understands the Walla user. Not only has Laura taught yoga herself, she's also led a boutique studio chain in doubling their revenue within 12 months, consulted for hundreds of studios around the world, built communities around fitness software, and spoken at dozens of conferences on sales, retention, and customer success, and what your software has to do with it. So we're going to be diving into all these things today, hearing a little bit about Laura's background, how she got into yoga, talking about working with boutique studios, suggestions for studios, talking about software, learning a little bit about Walla, and so much more. So you guys know, if you've listened to the show, I have a huge passion for yoga studios and working with yoga studio owners and managers. And that's been a lot of my work through my career. So very, very excited to dive in. So let's get to it. Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Just really honored to be here. Appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, I'm stoked to have you here. And can you share with listeners where you're joining me from?
Yeah, I'm actually in San Diego, California. So life's pretty good here.
Yeah. Good food, good weather. You're kind of close to the Mexican border, at least. Not close to where I am, but close to the border.
Right. It's a quick hop. I've been over the border many times.
Amazing. I love that. And so maybe we can start by just diving in with your story, how you first got into yoga, what inspired you to become a yoga teacher, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up an athlete. I've been an athlete my whole life. I played every sport possible until high school, and then really dove into volleyball. I'm just shy of 6 feet tall, which you can't see over a podcast. So it was pretty natural. And I played college volleyball and ended up with a pretty bad shoulder injury. And as I recovered, I just, I was such a competitor, and everything I was doing was focused around, lifting and really intense competitive workouts. And I wasn't healing. And so someone invited me to a yoga class, and I hated every second of it because I had to keep my focus on my mat and not compete with the people around me, which was totally unnatural for me at the time. But for whatever reason, I went back, and she just kept inviting me to go with her. And over, about a month, I started slowly falling in love with the time to just turn my brain off and listen to my body rather than just forcing my body. And it was such a healing experience for my shoulder and just in general, my mental state after being a college athlete. So that's how I stumbled into yoga. And it was actually at a gym, yoga at a gym. And I'll never forget when I found my first studio. I was actually working inside a sales career and recruiting and with a staffing firm. And I would go at lunch to a little yoga studio that was down the street from my office. And it was just my refuge. Every time I stepped in the door, it was like my shoulders could drop away from my ears. I could leave the world behind. And I just couldn't find that anywhere else. It was such a special place. So that was my kind of initial dipping my toe into what the power of a yoga studio is and the boutique fitness kind of experience.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. And then what kind of made you feel like, hey, I want to teach this? And yeah, maybe we can start with that. I was going to say, and get into yoga studios, but maybe we'll start with the teaching aspect.
Yeah. Well, at that studio, actually, my favorite teacher was a woman named Nan Comstock. And she, after one class, just said, I really am so amazed by how much you're here and how much you um, have grown in your practice. And, you don't have to think about changing careers or anything, but would you be interested in teaching yoga? I'd love to. I think you should. And there wasn't even a teacher training happening at that studio at the time. She just kind of planted the seed. And I hunted around and found a teacher training program that I was really, really excited about, partly because it seemed like a little bit more than just a physical practice. Like I looked at the core powers and the kind of bigger trainings out there. And this one was actually being held in somebody's temple in their backyard. That was the space this woman rented. And it was just such a unique and beautiful experience. And yeah, I wasn't sure if I actually wanted to teach when I went into it, but that was instantly apparent once I went through the training. I definitely wanted to sit in the seat of the teacher and lead classes.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. That's really actually similar to my experience with teacher training. I went into it thinking like, hey, this seems like something that would be really awesome to teach, but I wasn't like 100% sure that that was something that I wanted to do. Like I was very open to maybe this will just be about deepening my practice. And then as I went through the training, I was like, no, I want to share this with other people. I think there's just something really amazing and powerful about yoga, which, you understand and the people listening understand, where it's like, I have to like share this magic with other people out there.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that I tell studio owners and teachers when they're starting to promote a teacher training is don't be scared to just ask someone the question, even if they don't have an intention of teaching. They may after they go through the program, and it might just be the gateway that they've been looking for to something so much bigger. So you're spot on. I think it's just so powerful, and there's often the need for just that invitation to step in the door.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so did you start teaching right away?
I did. My first teaching gig was at like this grimy little gym in downtown San Diego that had a downstairs. I mean, it was like an old dark gym, but it had a downstairs fitness studio room, and I taught lunchtime yoga there. And it was a great intro because the classes were actually packed. Like it was a really busy gym. And people would come for like 20 minutes, they'd come for 40 minutes, then some people would stay for the whole hour. But I had a lot of experience observing bodies in motion and a lot of bodies in a room moving and breathing. And so it was a great intro, and it gave me confidence to then start walking into studios and, auditioning for teaching jobs. And so it was, yeah, although it wasn't the most glamorous place to start, it was a good way to dive in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everyone's got to start somewhere, right? I think that all of us have that kind of like, ooh, this wasn't like what I imagined this would be like type of story as a part of our career. And I actually feel like we learn so much from those experiences.
Yeah, it's funny just reflecting back on it. I remember walking in there and being like, oh my God, I would never touch the floor in this place. Some people would come in and just like do yoga on the floor because we didn't have enough mats, or they didn't have a mat. I'm like, oh God, please don't touch the floor. It's so gross. But
yeah, like part of my liability form is like, I'm not responsible for anything you receive from this floor.
Oh my God. Yes, exactly. And now post-COVID times, I'm like, oh God, there's no way that gym is still open.
Oh, well, rest in peace, Jim. And so can you tell me a little bit about like how you got into studio management and working with studios?
Yeah. When I was teaching at the little studio that was my sanctuary, is called Akasha Yoga in La Jolla. I just would check in the classes. Like I think at that time it was much more common to not have front desk staff and just have the teachers check in the classes, which some studios still do. And I kind of became interested in the software, and it was Mindbody that we would use, and just curious about learning the ins and outs of it. And the studio owner at one point came up to me and just was like, God, why is it when you teach, like we sell memberships and you sell class cards? And I was in sales. And so it was just natural to me to be like, hey, like, it looks like you just had a drop in today. Are you coming back? Like, I'd love to have you in class again. Here's what's available. So I just naturally would have the conversation with people. And the studio owner actually asked me to start working the front desk or managing. And I had said, no, I've got a full-time job. This is just my fun. But it gave me a window into really learning about the kind of the back end of running a studio and what it takes to operate the details, the how plans and pricing options work, and how scheduling works, and how often clients book, and if they book before they leave, if they book ahead of time. And so yeah, I really started becoming interested. And then I eventually, as I taught at other studios, I would offer that support to the other owners. Like I just offer guidance if they were struggling in mind body, or offer guidance if they were trying to figure out pricing. And it's not like I was a total expert. I had just seen what worked at the studio I was working at before. But one of the studio owners actually ended up being one of the founders of Yoga 6. And she designed all the programming from the ground up. She was hired by the founder of Yoga 6 to, train all the teachers, to build out a program that was scalable. And they were about to go through an acquisition of the largest yoga studio in San Diego. And she referred me in as the person who should do the change management and help with the acquisition and manage the studio. So I quit my sales career and dove into that. I took like a 50% pay cut and said yes to totally shifting my life into yoga full time.
Wow. That's amazing. Can you remember like what you were feeling in that moment? Because I feel like taking a 50% pay cut is like, that's kind of scary for most of us. And especially, life is expensive, especially if you live in like the US and California.
Yes, absolutely. I can't remember how long I'd been married at the time, maybe a few years. Oh yeah, I had been married because I had a baby. I had a 1-year-old, 1.5-year-old. And I just remember thinking at the time, my husband was like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, we knew it was going to be not the best decision financially for us. But I also saw so much potential. And I saw potential for Yoga 6 as a company. And I was like, listen, this is my foot in the door to eventually, grow into more of a corporate role there, and hopefully be more of, an operator for whether it be regions or all of the teachers and training, something where I was going to be able to use the skills I had acquired in corporate America. But I really felt like I needed that hands-on experience in the studio, like interacting with the clients day to day, managing teachers, really understanding at a deeper level how to manage my P&L and a budget for a studio, how to grow a studio. And so I knew that this was the foot in the door. I definitely felt scared. I definitely was nervous because I had a very flexible sales career after having my baby. I was a top performer in my company. And so they basically let me do what I want. I worked when I wanted to, and I executed as quickly as I could so I could be home with my kid. And I knew going into the yoga studio, that would be very different. And it was. I remember getting into the studio after the first couple of months being like, wait a second, working at a yoga studio is actually the most stressful job I've ever had.
Oh my gosh.
How am I working 60 hours a week? And I now don't see my daughter unless she comes to me at the studio during the day. So it was a big swing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. What a big change, and probably unexpected as well.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, often when I talk to studio owners, they're like, yeah, this was going to be my like fun job or my retirement job or my, like get out of the stress of corporate America and go run a yoga studio. And actually it's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I've talked to a lot of studio owners as well who were just kind of frustrated with not being able to like control their schedule because they worked for somebody else's studio and, maybe had kids and a partner and wanted to be able to like, pick their classes, choose how many they taught, have more of that freedom. And I guess what you don't realize when you start that studio is not only are you sure you have that benefit of for the most part being able to set up that schedule you want, but you wear a lot of other hats. It's like, you're not just the teacher anymore. You're doing so much of the other work that's on kind of the back end of actually making things run, getting, people into the class, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, it's like having kids. Like it's the hardest job, but it's also the most fulfilling job ever. Like you see the people's smiles and when they walk out of class, you hear their stories, you get to, if you're having a hard day, you walk into class and just get to pour it all out on the mat. And, there's nothing like that outside of a yoga studio. So, worth it, I guess, is the motto.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how long did you work in like yoga studio management and consulting with yoga studios?
Yeah, so I was managing the studio for 2 years. And after I had my second baby, it was just really apparent that I needed a more flexible lifestyle. And I had really become an expert in mind body software and in what it took to really grow a studio, how I designed sales processes. I figured out what it took to hire successful staff members. And I wanted to share that. So I decided to take a leap and start a consulting practice for studio owners. And I did that for about 7 years after leaving the studio. So in total, like management and consulting, it was just shy of 9 years that I was in that world. So it was, I feel like I've seen everything. And I didn't work just with yoga studios. Once I started consulting, I worked with all kinds of boutique fitness studios around the world. And it was a pretty amazing experience getting to see the similarities, the differences, connect the owners. Before I started Walla, I was one of the first MindBody certified consultants, and I approached MindBody. I actually walked up to their CEO at a conference and said, listen, I work with tons of your clients. They all have the same problems. They all have the same frustrations. We desperately need an online community for them to talk to each other, where it's not like their competitor next door. It's actually another studio across the country that could, learn from them, or they could learn from each other. And yeah, they ended up bringing me on as a contractor to launch something called MindBody One. And we grew that to, I don't know how big it is now. I'm not obviously involved with them anymore, but yeah, we grew that to about 8,000 studios before I left that were engaging and helping each other. And it was just a really, really amazing manifestation of this dream of connecting business owners. And yeah, just a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm curious if you can share with myself and listeners just some of the things you've learned through working with studios, consulting, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah. What I learned, the first thing I learned is, like I said before, everybody's going through the same thing. So it's very rare that your problems are unique, which is a beautiful thing because it means you're not alone, that there are other people out there that could help you, support you, empathize with you. So I was really amazed by the opportunity to let studios leverage each other. The other thing I learned was that there are so many things. Studios seem to be relatively far behind when it came to the technology we had available to us. And there were so many things being done in other industries, whether it be, from an email automations perspective or from a lead generation and funnel building or virtual opportunities. There were so many things happening in the world around boutique fitness and yoga that we just didn't have access to or weren't aware of in ways that we could really grow and scale our businesses and enhance the client experience. So I was very passionate about saying, listen, we don't have to only learn from what's available in our industry right now. Like, let's open our eyes and look around and see what the most successful companies are doing. What are some of the successful franchises in, spa and salon doing, or what are some of the technology innovations available in virtual programming? So it was really interesting to bring that to the table and kind of open studio owners' eyes to the possibility of what's next. I think it's easy for all of us to kind of rest on our laurels and get comfortable in what we've always done. But in an ever more competitive landscape, that's not going to sustain a business.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that that's a really good point, and I'm glad that you brought that up. Are there any other kind of learnings that you want to share or anything like that?
I would say the biggest thing that I told studio owners is one of the biggest things is that there are going to be a million decisions you have to make all the time, right? Like, do I pay my teacher more? This teacher is frustrating and not great for me, but my clients love her. Do I spend the money on this program that someone's promising me is going to make me more money? Or do I add another class to my schedule? They're just the decisions are endless. And somebody somebody said this to me one time, and it's kind of always stuck as one of the business lessons I have. Um, People, and especially your staff, people don't trust perfect. So don't worry about trying to make the perfect decision every time. You really have to take risks sometimes, and it means trial and error. It means you're going to make mistakes, and along the way, everyone, your staff, yourself, your team members, everyone will learn, and it's only going to make you better. So I would get trapped in that, perfectionism, I guess, cycle in your head. And ultimately that can paralyze a business. So it's a conversation that we'd often have, sometimes you just need to like make the decision, and maybe you're going to go up in flames and it was going to be the wrong one, but you will never make that decision again. And at least it eliminates that next time. So just really giving yourself permission to make decisions and just try.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. I love that piece of advice because I think I think that goes for, all yoga teachers, all studio owners listening is just, something to, yeah, something to keep in mind and something to try with your business. And I know that it can be really scary sometimes, but I feel like we do have to kind of put ourselves out there a little bit.
There's a Brene Brown quote that is one of my favorites always. And it's perfectionism is, wait, hold on. Let me make sure I get it right. um, Perfectionism, oh gosh, it's like a 2-ton shield that is the only thing holding us back from flying. We think it's protecting us, but it's actually the only thing that's holding us back from flying. And it's so true. We feel like perfectionism can be this like shield around us that's protecting us from being judged, from making mistakes, from appearing a certain way to our peers. But that kind of burden of perfectionism ultimately holds us back so much. So anyway, I try to bring that up as often as I can.
All right, yoga teachers, I have something fun in store for you. I am super excited to introduce you guys to Magic Mind, the little magical elixir which makes your body hum. They're also sponsoring this episode. Magic Mind is the world's first productivity drink that not only gives you the alertness that coffee and other energy drinks do, but also has ingredients to support memory, increase creativity, and boost focus. Magic Mind's goal is to help you do more and stress less, which is exactly what I need as a new mom and a busy entrepreneur. I really love Magic Mind because it helps me with my procrastination and brain fog, but doesn't give me the jitters and crashes the way that coffee does. For me, I love to enjoy my Magic Mind first thing in the morning. I heat it up with some frothed milk and make a little matcha latte, which is the perfect way to start my day. So if you are looking to have more energy, more productivity with something that gives you all natural ingredients, Magic Mind gave me a 20% off code to share with you. It is yoga. So go to magicmind.co/yoga and use the code yoga to get 20% off your first order. Once again, that's magicmind.co/yoga and use the code yoga to get 20% off your first order. All right, now back to the episode. Yeah, no, I love that. So thanks for sharing that. I love all of Brene Brown's work, and she's just always so like on the money with everything that she says, which is so great. I'm like, everything. Every time I read a book by her, it's like every sentence is like another profound aha moment for me, which is super, super cool. And I think that is something that's so important to remember is like getting stuck in perfectionism mindset means we might never put our gifts and our our programs and our ideas out into the world because we're constantly trying to perfect them. And it's something I always think about is like, I sort of feel like perfectionism is like chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Like you can just chase
Yeah.
and chase and chase, but you never really get there. And so part of it is like recognizing when it's good enough and then making improvements and changes from there.
Right. Yeah, I'll tell you, definitely running a software company has taught me that over and over again.
Yes, I can imagine. And yeah, I'm excited to dive into everything about Walla. But before we get there, maybe let's talk a little bit about, challenges that yoga studio owners are facing. And obviously the last 2 years has been a huge, huge, huge transition for everyone in the yoga space. But I think especially studios just having to do like a 360-degree pivot with things closing and then, dealing with reopening with restrictions, closing again, reopening, closing again. I know not everyone went through that, but I've worked pretty closely with a studio in Canada and they went through probably 4 or 5 shutdowns, lots of restrictions, and it was a lot of pivoting, a lot of adjusting. So, yeah, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing yoga studios facing and whatnot?
Couple big ones jump out. Staffing has been a really big challenge. I think it's starting to get better because a lot of teachers that went at it on their own during COVID and just said, you know what, I'm going to give it a go, and I've got a great following, and I'm going to start teaching online. They were not ready to go back to studios and really trying to make a successful business. And some did. Some are still doing well. I think a lot of teachers decided, you know what, I'm not really an entrepreneur and I'm not really someone who wants to have to market on a continual basis and spend a lot of money to maintain a successful business. And so they're slowly creeping back into studios. But I think the pool of teachers has definitely shrunk that studios have to select from. So it's a call to action for anybody who's considering being a yoga teacher. There are great opportunities out there. And then the other thing is just the absolute need to up your game from a tech perspective and to get, I guess, give new products a try, give new platforms a try. Like you said, everybody kind of had to pivot right away. And at the time, I think so many studios just were amazing. So just so agile and duct taping systems together and figuring out what they can do to just execute. And that was incredible. And now we're in this mode of stability and really looking back to see what worked and what was necessary, and then what is going to be necessary to future proof the business. And, we're in this time of, I guess I would say, corporate growth in boutique fitness, and franchises are exploding. It's definitely, COVID did not stop the franchise growth game. And franchisees get big loans and they have the marketing support of a corporate entity. So individual studios now are not just competing with other individual studios in their own town, they're competing with the marketing engine of a big corporate entity. So there's just a different level of business sophistication that's needed. And even if the studio owner doesn't have that or isn't interested in that, they need a team that can support them in that area. So whether that's hiring, a great web designer and a marketing consultant, or somebody who can streamline operations and create standard operating procedures in the studio so that you can free up time for yourself to really look at how to grow, how to expand. It's honestly part of how I made a living over my 6-7 years consulting, was that studio owners really realized I need to up my game and I need somebody on my side that can help me do that.
Yeah, for sure. That's really interesting to hear about the franchises. That's not an area that I work in at all. So I feel like I wasn't like totally aware of that, but it would make
Mhm.
sense. I mean, they've got, bigger budgets, being able
Mhm.
to take on loans obviously is helpful in that type of thing. Having, just that name behind them. Like if somebody maybe goes to a new town and they find a studio where they've heard the name before, or they've been to that studio in like, their hometown, they might choose that one over like a smaller one that they don't know of. So definitely like benefits behind being a franchisee owner or working with them, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm curious with that, like you mentioned just with the boutique studios needing to have a little bit more kind of professionalism and higher level business acumen. What are some of the things you see within that are helpful for studio owners to know? And
Yeah.
Obviously if they don't have these skills, then hiring these people, like you said, is really helpful. But what types of things should they sort of be looking for?
Yeah. One of the first things is, marketing is a consistent practice. I think what I found in consulting is that a lot of studio owners knee jerk into, oh my gosh, we haven't had enough new people in 6 months, so we need to start marketing. Or, we need to spend money on Facebook ads. And that's actually the opposite of what you need to be doing. What marketing is a consistent practice. So it should be a part of your budget every single month. There's no magic pill that's like, okay, this is the Facebook ad you run, and everybody gets 30 new clients in a month because of it, or 100 new clients in a month because of it. It's a consistent practice where you have to be monitoring funnels and watching results and pivoting where you're seeing results more. And typically it's not, single channel. It's an omni-channel expenditure. So it might be some on direct mail, some on Facebook ads, some on Instagram, some work on Google or SEO. It might be really focused on email marketing and paying someone to build out some really powerful funnels for you. But it's a consistent practice. And we know that studios retain, great studios retain 50% of their clients year over year. Average studios retain 20% of their clients year over year. So just thinking about that, like you're going to lose 80 out of every 100 people that walk through your door the first time. A year later, they won't be a part of your studio anymore. So
Wow.
to me, that says you absolutely have to focus on continually filling, like the door has to be opening every day to new clients. And I think particularly really small studios that have operated with a core group of members who've been there forever get really comfortable in that pattern. But COVID shook it up, right? Their core members maybe got used to something else during the last 2 years. And so there's this really desperate need to get fresh faces through the door. And if you've never focused on this before, now is the time. It is critical that you budget in marketing every single month. And again, it's one of those things that's trial and error. Like you're going to have to test. So it might be A/B testing an email sequence, or trying 2 different Facebook ads, or trying 2 different local influencers in your community, having somebody research who the top influencers are for your, honestly, micro influencers are the ones to go to in communities. How you can get them to come into your studio to be an ambassador for you. So I think it's, when it comes to actual business acumen, marketing is an area that's really, really critical for studios, and where most studio owners really don't have a lot of expertise. So I'd say, if you're going to invest in anything, that's a really good spot to look. The other thing is understanding how to measure the data. So if you are investing in marketing, if you are investing in any kind of shifts or changes in the business, it's critical that you measure the success. And that was one thing when we were building Walla. I was so passionate about giving studios reporting that was easy to understand, dashboards that measured success and gave action steps for what you could do to make an impact on the data or on the numbers. And so it's really an important practice to not just try things, but to try and measure and pivot, and then over again, try and measure and pivot. And that's what makes successful businesses. If you don't measure afterwards, you're wasting your money.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I think all of that is really interesting to hear, and just really good tips for us to be remembering. And I think that, as a business owner, marketing is such a huge piece of it. And it's something that we're not really taught a lot about in our trainings. Like when we become a yoga teacher and, we're not really like trained on how to be a successful yoga studio owner when we take our 200-hour or 300-hour. And so these are things we really need to learn because, those stats are huge. Like thinking about, only retaining 20% of your clients is like, not only do you need to work on retention and making sure that your current students and customers are happy, but it's also, focusing on getting new faces through the door and then having, options and payment plans and stuff that they're interested in. And I feel like what you said about, clientele shifting and getting used to a new way and stuff is something that I very much saw through one of the studios that I work with through the pandemic was, pivoting online. There was a lot of people who were kind of core clientele who got really used to practicing online. And
Yeah.
so all of a sudden it's like, you reopen your studio and you expect, oh, our people are going to be so excited to be back in here. And none of them were coming in
We're
person.
back. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of it was like, this specific studio has a bit of an older clientele. So there was a little bit of, nervousness and stuff with coming back early
Mhm.
on and that type of thing. But then I think also just people getting used to a new routine
Right.
where it's like, oh, I used to do this thing, but now I do this other thing that's actually more convenient for me. I can roll out of bed, practice yoga in my pajamas with my coffee beside me. I don't have to, scrape my car in the middle of winter and drive to the studio, especially if you're like this studio and you're in Canada where it's cold a good chunk of the year. So I think
Right.
that people have just gotten used to kind of this new way of doing things. And if you are a studio that does a hybrid of online and person or is trying to do only in person, once again, you definitely do have to find those people who are wanting to come in person to come to your studio.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The name of the game is flexibility right now. And the expectation from consumers is that they can have what they want. It's been demonstrated to them that they can have their cake and eat it too. Like you can have your community and your practice at home, or you could have it in studio. So often I find that a lot of studios have been successful in getting their members back. It really is kind of case by case. Some studios, and honestly, I shouldn't say case by case, it's location by location. Like you said, Canada or different cities that had stricter restrictions where people really did build a very consistent habit at home. But then there are other cities where restrictions loosened earlier and it wasn't a big deal for people to be back in the studio and be maskless. So I think where you physically are has a big impact on what the business needs right now.
Yes, 100%. And I think that there's just depending on kind of what you've been through, what your community's been through over the last 2 years, there's going to be a different sort of mindset and level of comfort, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that that's something important to know about your particular community and clientele also. And then one of the things that I feel like is so important is software. And I know this is something where it's super important to you and a lot of the work you do. Can we start by talking a little bit about like how how software can be really important for you as a business owner and how it can really help you in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing to just recognize is how many things you're handling as a studio. You have staff, so you have staff management and payroll. You have the studio operations, which consist of the schedule and the pricing and the schedules of your desk staff. Um, and then you also have the client facing side of it. So there's client management, there's communication, making sure you have all the data around the business, the financial side of things, and the kind of analytics and performance side of things. So there are all of these factors that come into play for the studio, and having a system that is easy to use, easy to understand, and then that really does understand you, right? Like your business is built for your business is so critical to the success of a studio. And I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more, but one of the reasons I wanted to start Walla is that I felt like so few of those boxes were being checked. Yes, there was a big platform that could handle everything, but it was designed for and it evolved to support all different types of businesses, not just boutique studios. And so there were so many complicated steps to get something done because maybe that they added that extra step for the music school that they decided to, start building for, or the salon or the spa or the dog walking business or the, swim school that has a totally different style of programming. What I felt was needed was a platform that was really specifically for boutique fitness, that understood the intricacies of, late cancel and no show fees, or, the need to have intro offers available for people online at any time who are new, or an upsell offer from intro to membership. So there are a lot of things that I'd observed over the years in consulting, and actually lived as, my life running a studio, that I was constantly frustrated with and needing from my software platform. And so it was actually a really cathartic experience to be able to take that out of my brain and put it into a software platform.
Hey, yoga teacher. We're just taking a quick break from the podcast to talk a little bit about technology. And maybe that's not why you became a yoga teacher. I know that that's certainly not why I became a yoga teacher. And if you're procrastinating or putting off the tech side of your business, I completely understand. When I first started my yoga business, I had never built a website before. I had no idea where to start. And I also didn't have a lot of funding to hire a web designer to build a business for me. So finding a platform that allows you to easily and effectively build your own website, create your online business while not breaking the bank is super important. And that's why Offering Tree is my go-to recommendation for yoga teachers who want their online business experience to be easy, quick, and simple. You can get your class and lesson scheduling system set up in 30 minutes with Offering Tree. Really, I'm not even joking. When I first started working with them, I was like, I have to test this for myself. And even for somebody who's not super tech savvy, it was pretty straightforward. Everything is integrated for you, including payments and video software like Zoom. So if you want to try Offering Tree for free, head on over to offeringtree.com/MBO. Everyone gets a 2-week free trial, and you'll also get 50% off the first 3 months with my discount code. Once again, that's offeringtree.com/MBO. All right, now back to the episode. Yeah, that's so cool to hear. I know, just because we've been talking about studios, I think I mentioned this kind of before. Like, I know a lot of studio owners who have opened studios with sort of a similar mindset of like, these studios aren't serving me the way that I need. So I'm going to go ahead and like build my own studio, and I'm going to, pay my teachers what I want to be paid, and, create a schedule that works and offer classes that I'm interested in. And it's really cool that you were able to kind of take that sort of same mindset and build a software. And so can you tell me a little bit more about Walla, about, what it's like to build a software platform and all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the kind of idea for it, I have a business partner, a guy named Doug Hecht, and he and I actually met when he hired me as an advisor, a consultant, to help him with his last fitness startup. So it was a company called Limber, and it was essentially like yield management and dynamic pricing for spots and fitness classes. And so that's how we met. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and we both had a really big passion for just kind of upping the game and from a technology perspective in boutique fitness. And so he had his company actually sold to MindBody, and he and I stayed in touch. And I, for a long time, had a desire to build something better than what was out there. I have this visceral memory of being pregnant, like 7 or 8 months pregnant, sitting on my bouncy, my big ball in my office at the yoga studio, and needing to understand some data around payroll. And I couldn't figure it out. Like, I'd had 2 teachers that asked for raises, and I really needed to figure out how profitable they were in their classes before I said yes. And it was just so painful to try and get the data out of my system. And I was like, I have such a like detailed memory of this. Like, it was 4 o'clock on a Saturday. All I wanted to do was be home with my 1.5-year-old. And I was just crying. Like, I can remember the tears dripping on my big belly. And I was just like, God, somebody has got to build something better than this. So that stuck with me forever. And when Doug actually approached me, to start Walla. And he was like, I think the time's now. We've talked about this, but like, I think the time is now. And I actually said no to him at first because it just was too scary. But then he asked again, and I ultimately said yes. But we really were passionate about looking outside the industry at what, like I said earlier, there are just so many incredible innovations happening in technology, whether it be machine learning or data and analytics, or even one thing that we brought into it is behavioral psychology. We were able to bring in leading research from behavioral psychologists and make a personality profile quiz in Walla. So when you onboard with a studio that uses Walla, we have literally a custom built for boutique fitness and motivation personality quiz. So you, as the consumer, learn about yourself. Like, hey, this is what it takes to motivate me and to help me build a habit. And then the studio knows, okay, this is how we customize our communication to this individual, or this is how they need to be motivated. So, or how they need to be communicated with to build a habit. So we can customize that. So there are all of these things outside of just the basics of the software that we said, all right, let's give these businesses a fighting chance at sustainability, at really strong profit. And let's make it easy, because right now, the last thing studio owners need is another piece of complicated software. So we looked to some other platforms that we felt took very complicated things, like Gusto, for example. Gusto does payroll and HR. So really complicated for big businesses to run HR and payroll and employee management. And they made the most friendly, easy to use, fun software. Like I love it. Every time I go in our Gusto system, I laugh because they have this little piggy bank that like marches across the screen and it changes outfits every day. And we just were so inspired by businesses that could take a really complicated business or complicated problem and solve it with simple, clear software. So that was the goal from the beginning.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. And I really love the approach of like studio owners don't need, and teachers and, fitness owners, like none of them need software that is complicated.
Right.
Like we need life to be a little bit easier, right? Because we've got so many things going on, so many aspects of the business that we're wearing hats for and that we're, trying to run. And for a lot of studio owners, I think it's hard to, hire out a lot of people. Like you probably have an accountant, you maybe have a studio manager, somebody who can help you with like maybe social media and some of the more admin stuff like customer service emails. But then there's all the other things that you still have to worry about. And when you're messing around with your software, that can just eat up so much of the limited time that you do have to work on your business. And I feel like for studio owners, you really want to be, like we've talked about, focusing on client retention, getting new clients in the door. And for a lot of studio owners, it's like, especially boutique studios, they're like the face of the studio, which means they need to be there present with their students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think too, one of the other sides of it that was really important to me was being a company that was a true partner to the studios. And one of the challenges, like you asked before, that studios are facing now is, they're not just competing with other studios for clients' eyes, they're competing with aggregators like ClassPass or now MindBody. And so we wanted the studio to be the hero again. And we really made a commitment that we were not going to be a consumer, a B2C company. We are a B2B software platform. And we are here to support the studio. We're not trying to sell to your customers ever. We're trying to facilitate the relationship for you to make sure that you, as the teacher, as the studio owner, as the studio itself, have the deepest relationship possible with your students so you can help them succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's really great. And so can you walk me through, I know you talked a little bit about making like payroll simplified. Can you walk me through a couple other, benefits that Walla offers their customers? Like if somebody's listening and they're like, this is the perfect podcast episode for me because I'm tired of the studio software that I'm currently using. I'm ready to make a change. What are some other reasons why Walla might be the software for a boutique yoga studio owner?
Yep. Well, first things first, we saw how many systems studios were duct taping together to make their studios run. So we brought a lot of that in-house. We have video on demand housed within Walla. So you can have a video on demand library that is, either built into your unlimited membership or a video on demand only membership, or added into any plan that you'd like. We also have a direct Zoom integration, so there's no third party needed to connect the dots there. When you build a class in Walla, you just say, is this in studio, live stream, or both? And the second you check that live stream box, we auto generate a Zoom meeting. That Zoom meeting gets texted or emailed to the clients that book the class, that when they book, and then again right before the class. So all of the virtual side of things is completely taken care of. And honestly, that's some of the best feedback we get from our clients is like, God, you have no idea how many steps and systems and, challenges I had to deal with, because I was like monitoring if my members were all still members one month so that they could log into Vimeo or to some other third party to access our video library. Or if someone suspended their membership, I had to go remove their access. And there was another login. So we really wanted to simplify that for both the studio and the consumer. We treat virtual or, as an equal citizen in our platform. One of the other things is we've really made, like I mentioned before, reporting and decision-making easy based on reports. So we have a way to take action from our reports. For example, our first visit report, we have right away at the top, you see what percentage of your first visitors have come back for a second visit. There's a nice big dashboard there. You can direct text message those clients straight from the platform. So if you see you've got 5 clients that haven't returned for a second visit, you can check the boxes next to their name, text message them, and just say, hey, how was your first class? Happy to, guide you towards whatever the next best one would be for you. I'm just spitballing, but we let you take action inside the software. So it's a really, really easy thing to do. And one of the best pieces of feedback we get from our clients is like virtually no training is needed for the staff. Very different from any other platform that they've used. And then the last piece too, I mean, just in kind of closing that loop on the other software platforms needed, we have digital waivers. They're really simple. They're built in. You can scan a QR code and the client gets the waiver. They sign it on their phone and then it attaches to their profile. We've just modernized the experience so much. Substitute management platform where you can request subs as a teacher for your 12 classes that you're going to miss when you're out of town for 2 weeks. You just check the boxes next to the class, send out the sub request, and then as people raise their hand or click I'll take it, the manager can approve and it makes the change automatically in the platform. So we've taken all of these really big pain points for studios that I've heard for years, just took time, took energy, and we've automated them or simplified them in Walla. And consistently our clients say like, oh my God, I save an hour every night because I don't have to go in and, manually charge late cancel or no show fees, or I don't have to go reconcile who has access to my video on demand library every month. It's just these little bits of time add up to giving you your life back. And not just your life, but the energy to engage with your clients and just be a better business owner. And that is what drives us all the time.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing all of that. I feel like all of that just kind of got me a little bit excited because those are things that, having worked with studios for, like 7 years, 8 years, I just feel like it's stuff I've seen constantly of them really needing. So can you share where listeners can go to like find out about Walla, learn more? I know we have a discount code as well.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So we are at hellowalla.com. And actually, I'm happy to share my personal email is Laura, just Laura at hellowalla.com. I'm happy to answer questions, jump on a, just intro call or discovery call and chat with you about, whether or not this is right for your business. We have just a phenomenal team. And one interesting thing I'll share with you is my sales team, the people that you'll talk to, every single one of them has owned a studio. And it's something I was super, super passionate about. I didn't want to hire just a bunch of like boiler room, 20-year-olds who can dial for dollars. That's my sales team. I wanted studio owners to be able to talk to someone who's been in their shoes and empathize. So when you do a demo with Walla, if you go to the link that you're sharing for the discount, your demo is going to be with somebody who's been in your shoes, who's owned a studio, who's gone through the challenges, the ups and downs, and who really understands the intricacies of our system and how it can support your studio.
So we have a link that we'll put in the show notes for everyone who's listening. So if you do want to check it out, you decide you want to learn more, then you can get a little bit of a discount. And so, yeah, just since it is a long link, we'll put that into the show notes for everyone to check out. And then, yeah, this conversation's been really awesome, Laura. I really appreciate you sharing everything. Is there anything else you want to share with anyone listening here today before we wrap up?
Yeah, the last thing I want to say is just way to go, guys. You have gotten through a really, really challenging couple of years and come out the other side. And the world needs what you do more than ever right now. So I know it's been hard. I know it's been a challenge, and most of us are pretty tired, but you've fought the good fight and you're still standing. And I just applaud everything that you're doing, because really, the tides are going to turn. Your business will be thriving again because we need it. Everyone needs it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think that that's the perfect way to end this. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for all the information you shared, and just for being out there supporting studio owners, and especially our small boutique studios, because I really feel like those can be like the heart of communities.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.